Welcome, everybody, to the Discover session for October. I must first apologise um, for the time zone confusion. Yes, the UK has now changed to GMT instead of BST, but unfortunately, when I was trying to account for that and my laptop was somewhere else, country-wise, I set the wrong time zone. So apologies for that. The people who came 2 hours early. Hopefully, you all enjoyed the Apple event that you then presumably went and watched. Recently, we had a little Dorico update for Mac users, not to coincide with the Apple event, but for Mojave. So 2.1.20. But we also have another free update coming up. So another forthcoming free update, and I wanted to show you a few of the things that are in that update. So in this particular session, if you're watching, especially if you're watching live, you might not be able to follow along with some of the things I'm doing because I'm going to show you a few of the new things. I'm not going to show you everything because actually there's a fair amount coming up, but I am going to show you a few of the things that are coming up. And also, for anybody who missed it, in October, Dorico is now 2 years old. So since our release date of version 1, Dorico is now 2 years old. So I'll presume that the audio is okay and that somebody will have told me something. No, Richard, we're not going to look at chord diagrams today. It is important, but it's not going to be in this next free update. Here's some other things that we can show you. I'm presuming, as I said, audio-wise and video-wise is okay. As always, there's a little cog in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you want to change the quality, make sure it's on the highest possible, probably HD. Audio is fine, good. Also, if you're watching this session and it's not live, there is a double speed option. So if I don't speak quick enough, you can speed me up. So new things. So you'll notice that there'll be a few new things probably for anybody who's looking at the screen carefully that we're looking at. We're not going to look at all of them today, but here's some of the options you'll like. So for example, on my Mac here, I often use a trackpad and the pinch and zoom options. Now this has annoyed me for a little while, and we've been looking at it. So now when you pinch and zoom on Dorico, we don't have that annoying thing we had where it felt like you were zooming around a ball sometimes. I don't know if that's the technical term, but it did. So pinching and zoom is now much smoother for anybody who uses that. So that's just a little thing. I quite like it. Also, with popovers and things that you can edit, if I select, for example, this tempo marking up here, if you've entered a tempo marking and then you want to change it, then what you had to do is use the properties panel down here and edit all the options in the properties panel. But what you will now be able to do is just select it and then press enter, and it will then edit it. So you can, for example, make a change to this. And it will give you options on the popover again. So that will apply, of course, to dynamics as well, and it'll apply to what else have we got here? We've got some lyrics here, some nonsense lyrics. So those kind of things that you would have put in with a popover, you now don't necessarily have to go in edit by pressing enter. Sorry, edit, but from the properties panel, you can now just press enter. Also, you might have noticed, especially if I zoom around here, we've got some little bar numbers appearing. So there's an option, there will be an option for in the page view, which I'm in now, as you can see, that you'll get bar numbers appearing. So especially in larger scores, when you weren't quite sure which bar number you were on anymore when you were working on things, there's a neat little option here for bar numbers. There will also be, this is now galley view, there will also be an option to show these ghost names and clefs on the left-hand side. It's not in the build I'm using at the moment, but you will have that also available in page view. No questions or surprises there from people. Hi from people who are. What is the red circle? Oh yes, Dominic. I'm actually not going to use the red circle today. Sorry, but yes, there's that's a MIDI record option. So I'm going to leave that for next time, I think. So some other options I quite like in this one. Let's have a look. This one will do. This bar will do. Here we have a couple of instruments here. We've put some notes in. And what you'll be able to do if you right-click is there's a paste special option for swap. So if I click on swap, then the notes in these two bars will swap places. So it's a useful kind of, so what would this sound like if I changed effectively change the voicing between these two instruments or change these options over? And it's kind of a double copy and paste. So it cuts it out of both instruments, switches them over and pastes it back in again, which is quite nice. So That's me undoing, but there's a new swap option. If you want to set a shortcut for that, you'll notice this preferences dialog has changed as well, with some playback options and some input and editing options in here. But in our usual options here for key commands, you'll be able to look for swap. And if you like that in selection and navigation, you'll be able to assign a shortcut to swap if it's something you want to use a lot. So I'm just going to check the comments. Yeah, okay. Somebody's asking about stemless note heads, I think. But yes, you can use a property for that if you want to. But Daniel's just answered that one, so that's okay. So one of the other things, since this is a kind of jazz type score, is let's find this. This bit will do. Let's remove some of these hairpins for a minute so we can. Well, I'll have a bit of space. So in this trumpet part here, we've got some options over here in this panel for jazz. And in here, we've got some plop bends and some doits and some various other options. So there's falls in there, there's lifts and falls. You can use those from this panel. You can also amusingly type them in from the popover. So Shift O, and then you can type plop. Or actually, it also means you can type things like plop smooth. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? You can also have doit, and you can have full, and you carry on with the options there. So there's a and if you don't like these anymore, so if you need to remove them and one or more notes, you can just press the remove option. You don't click on them and press delete because they're attached to the note head, so they're part of that. You'll end up deleting the note head. So use this remove option over here in the panel if you need to remove those. So yeah, I know that a lot of people you've either done workarounds for that so far, or you've been wanting those. I need to say that these are not going to play back because mainly due to the complexities of various either MIDI or sample library options at the moment. And a lot of sample libraries probably don't have those options or MIDI devices. So at the moment, these won't play back, but they will all display. There is also in engraving options, there's a new jazz articulations section. So in here, you can choose some of the options. So you've got a line style for lifts, so straight, dashed, and wavy, or for smooth plops, haha, or falls or doits. And then there's a default length for the options here, and there's also positioning options here that you can set as well. There's also what happens when you've got rhythm dots. So do you want it to the right of that, or is it allowed to tuck inside? And if you've got a chord and you've got multiple lines, then you're not necessarily going to get a line for every note head, because actually that doesn't make sense. But if you do use multiple lines, then where are they going to display and how are they going to display, and what you can do with those as well. So as you'd probably expect, there's a number of engraving options for those as well. I didn't say this, but this panel did cause some amusement when we first saw it. Let me just have a look. Yeah, Daniel's answering some of the questions anyway. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. So in this, let's see, also in this score, I'm just going to switch to galley view for a second. So I've already put in some of the things. So there's a fine here, and there's a symbol here for repeats as well. So a DS type. So when I get to the end of this piece, I've put in a repeat section there, and a B, and a C section. Now the C section, you can do. I need to do things on this one, like if I select this bar line here and open the properties panel. Then down here, there's a play n times. So if I increase this and say, actually, I'd want to play that 3 times, then it says play 3 times up here, which is kind of handy. And it will actually play 3 times, which is also a lot more useful. Actually, at this point, also, I'm going to use Shift R for this one here. Oh, if we can get rid of the panel now. And I'm going to say that here I want to put DS. So then we have a DS labeled there as well. You've got options, of course, for this in engraving mode as well. So if we go to here, as well as the repeat endings that you've seen before, we now have repeat markers, and they have a number of options in here. So the abbreviation style for what you want those to look like, the appearance of 2 coda repeat jumps, the case for repeat jump text, Things like, do you want to say DC, or do you want a symbol as well in there, or as you can see, there's a number of options in here. You can, of course, change the size of a lot of these options as well. So there's, of course, paragraph styles for a lot of these things as well. The one I've got here that says play 3 times, you could say repeat X times as well. So if I just apply that, then it'll say repeat 2 times, or you can say play X number of times, so play 3 times, depending on how you prefer to refer to that. There's an X4 option or a 3 repeats option as well, and there's also a custom prefix or custom suffix you can add to those if you want to use them. There's a repeat count options, and there's design options for conventional or Japanese style. There's a scale factor for these symbols as well, and also various options for positioning for these for jumps and things. Now you can do all sorts of different jumps and things inside the piece. So for example, here we've put play 3 times in a DS, so that will go back to the symbol. But also, actually, at the end of the piece here, then I can also put in a DC, for example. Or actually, in this particular case, I'm not going to do that one. What I'll do is I'll say DC al fine. And there's also a panel over here in the repeat structures. So you've got these options here as well if you want to click on them from here, and repeat sections options as well. So where you would have previously found things like the rhythm slashes options and bar repeats options, of course, the tremolos that have been here a while, and repeat endings, you've now got repeat jumps and repeat sections in here as well. So actually, these actually are slightly bigger than the default as well, because I've already edited the paragraph style for those. So now I've got a DS here and I've got a DC as well. So for example, if I just click on this one here and do a playback option here, so this bit here is going to play back 3 times, slightly random piece, I understand that. So this one is now jumping back to the symbol up here, which I'd already put in. And the symbol you can put in a number of ways as well. Dollar is actually my favorite because it looks like a dollar symbol. This one I put in actually just writing DS, but I could have written D dollar as well. So there's a number of options that you can write in there. And actually this bit here is actually a coda. So if I just press Shift R and write coda, and there we go, we get a coda symbol and coda text, and we get a gap here as well. So now if I select this note here and press play, then this one will do the repeat. And then DC, I haven't finished this one. I've kind of slightly random this version, but there you go. And then it got to the fine and finished. So I didn't press stop. It just, of course, it got to fine and stopped. So DS repeat options, there's all sorts of multiple repeats, and you can have multiple codas if you want, and those kind of things are also handled. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun playing with all of those kind of options. As I said, there's engraving options, things for those as well, and also things like with the repeats and things like that, and with bar numbers, you can also count repeats if you want to. So if we say count repeats in here, then the bar numbers after this repeat here will change. So you can see here now it's telling you what the different options are, whether or not we're counting repeats. So let me just check if there's any questions on those. Standing ovation. Well, I would stand up, but I'm not going to. I'll bow, and you can't tell I'm doing that either because you're just watching my screen. Nobody's mentioned my new glasses either. I know you can't see them. So here's a few other options that are going to be in this next free update. As I said, the options I'm showing today, if you're on version 2, then all of these will be free. Somebody said, well, is there something else? Oh, yes. Down here in the bottom left-hand side of the screen here, there's a concert pitch no selection. It says, if I click on the note, it says concert pitch bar 1 or 70, depending on whether he's doing the repeat, and the note is E flat 4. There you go. Also, of course, if you then switch this to transposed pitch, then it will say it's now in transposed pitch. The note is still E4, but of course it's showing you the transposed version here, telling you down here what the concert pitch note will be. So you can see, and if I select more than one note, it will just say multiple selection. But as you move around, it says that's a dynamic, that's a lyric, that's a note C5. I was asked for this actually in particular by a teacher at the Weald of Kent Grammar School, because it's a very useful educational option, but actually it's also useful in many other cases as well. So there's the little status bar down there in the bottom left, which shows you lots of nice options. How soon? Okay. Um, so the things I'm showing you today aren't possible today. Today, if you're not watching live, is the 30th of October. So happy Halloween for tomorrow. This update we hope will be available by the end of November. If not, you'll have it by Christmas. And I think there's only 55 days to Christmas anyway. So there you go. And as I said, for version 2 people, if you've already got version 2, this is a free update. There's an option I quite like, which is select more. So if I select this dynamic here, these dynamics are not grouped at the moment. So as I'm clicking on all of these, you can see some of these are you see so they're linked across the parts here, but they're not grouped across this way. But if I press Command Shift A or Control Shift A, then I can do select more on those dynamics there. If I just zoom out, you see I've only selected these ones here. If I press select more again, then it's also selecting all of them all the way through the piece. So an example, just with some notes, if I select a note here, a chord here, and do select more, it's selected the ones in that bar, and then it'll select actually the ones in that voice, and then it'll select that voice all the way through the piece there. And if you do so the same with dynamics, I can select one, I can do select more and select the ones in that bar. I can do it again, I can select the ones all the way through the piece. The same with the lyrics here. So if I select a lyric, I can do select more once. I can do it again. And you'll also notice these kind of changes if you're in page view. So here, if I select one, do select more, I'm going to get some lyrics selected here. Select again, select more again, then I have more dynamics. Sorry, more lyrics. This is useful for dynamics. That's why I've been saying dynamics, because you sometimes want to group dynamics, and sometimes you just want to align them and you don't want to group them. So if you're in engrave mode, you can now use select more to select these two dynamics, right click and say dynamics, align dynamics, so that those are aligned, but they're not grouped, because sometimes that's the way you'll want them to be. So for lining things up, that can be a very useful option. There's, I'm just checking, sorry, no, that's fine. But also you'll find that you may have previously used filters, but when you select things in engrave mode, you can't filter dynamics. If I do, if you had a selection, let's say you'd selected something like this, and you happen to be in engrave mode, then when you go to filter, then you can't do that for dynamics, but you can use select more. So you can select one of an object, whatever the type of object is, and then you select more to select more of them. This is also useful for chord symbols. So let's switch to this trumpet part, for example. So this trumpet part, I've already put some chord symbols in. Now you see, because I've got these multiple repeats, I'm getting an awful lot of options showing up here. So I'm just going to say, actually, let's not bother with that. So chord symbols. So I can select one chord symbol. And if I select one, let's select this one here in this bar. If I do select more, then it gets me the ones in that bar. If I do select more again, then it's selecting the chord symbols all the way throughout this part. So if I only wanted the chord symbols to show in one section, for example, in a solo section, then what you might want to do is use this option to easily select the chord symbols just in this part, and then you can use the show and hide option. Now there is also now a key command available for show and hide. So when you go to edit here, there's a hide show item, and you can assign a shortcut to that, which actually is more useful than you'd know. So if you want to assign a shortcut to that, you can hide all the chord symbols, and then you can, for example, select an area, and actually what I'm going to do here is I have a filter set up already to select chord symbols. So I've selected this region, select the chord symbols, and use show, so I can bring the chord symbols back just for one section. Maybe one day we'll have a different option for showing and hiding chord symbols anyway, but at the moment I find that quite useful, so I thought you might too. So yeah, a little productivity thing that somebody just termed it that's quite useful with select more. Also, these kind of things are useful if you are doing things like playing techniques. So if you have things here like violin upbow, up and down bow, if you select one and you select more, it will only select the up and down bow options. If I select the Piz and Arco here, if I select Piz, then it will select more, will also select the other one. It doesn't matter how many times I continue pressing it, it doesn't also select the up and down bows. If I want to, I can select one of each type of item and use select more, and then I can get them all if I want to. Oh, he says, and now I can't make that work. There you go. So you can still select them all that way if you want to as well, but generally it's more useful just to be able to select more of the same type of item. So there's a different category there for how the selection is working. And actually, there's with things like lyrics, Dorico will look at the line number, so the verse number, and the line type of that lyric. And invoking select more will only select lyrics whose line number and placement, etc., is the same. So, for example, above or below staff. With dynamics, we've seen that's a useful option, and you don't need to group things. And with playing techniques, as we've shown here, it's also very useful for the up and down bow and things like that. Also, because it's the kind of thing I've also used a lot. If I just go back to the score in this part here, if you've got, for example, clusters of notes here. Now, yes, in this particular case, what I did is I copied these notes and I used the explode option to get them to the other parts. But sometimes you just want to filter out some of these things. And although for a while you've been able to go to edit filter, and you can filter out notes in chords, and you can, that kind of thing. So you can say notes in chords, top, second, third, fourth, or bottom. It hasn't been possible to set a shortcut for those. Now it will be. So when you're going to key commands, and if you look, for example, you can filter for your bottom. You can tell I've spent a week with a 5-year-old on half term, can't you? Sorry, 7-year-old. So you've got some options here, but also in the filter options, you can filter bottom note or single notes. This is a random shortcut I've just set for today, so set your own shortcuts. But there are various other options here that you can set so that you can easily filter in one go. And somebody's just said, "Oh, hi Tristan. Key shortcuts for filters is a game changer." Honestly, we would have done it before if it was the simplest thing in the world, but it will now be there. So you can filter the bottom. So for example, you can say filter bottom notes. You can say set a filter for top notes. You can set a filter for, in this case, I've set one for kind of middle because I was doing a lot of 3-chord options. So, but second, third, fourth, there's a lot of useful options there that you'll be able to use. Now, it may be that actually you want to use explode, as I said before. Use this option here to use explode over these staves, but actually sometimes the filter options are what you need to remove or edit or something else. So there you can now set shortcuts for those. There's also, although there's some shortcuts to do things like select a note, and you can use things like Alt and Shift to shorten or lengthen a note. If I do a whole chord here, then you can use the rhythm grid options, and you can say if the rhythm grid is set to this, then lengthen or shorten the note by the rhythm grid. Somebody said what would be really useful for them is to be able to set a shortcut that says shorten it by this value, please, all the time. So also in the key commands, if I look for shorten, in the selection navigation, there's shorten duration by grid value, but then there's a new option for shorten duration by. These don't have shortcuts set for them, but if you want to set shortcuts for them, it may be keyboard shortcuts or metagrid or whatever else you want to use. Then you can now do those. So if you need to set an option that says, actually, I need to be able to select all these notes and shorten them by an 8th note or something like that, then you can do that. And also, of course, if you need to lengthen something, then you can also set shortcuts to lengthen something. So it may be a MIDI cleanup job, or just you're changing your mind on something as you're composing. Then you might want to lengthen and shorten things. And of course, that will make a difference if you're using insert mode as well. So yes, just another nice little option there. So one of the other things I want to do for today is look at some of the trills options. So they've actually looked at trills again and kind of what the display options are for trills in a different way. It's kind of quite a fair amount of rewriting this. So there's a number of trill options here. So you can see I've set up a few already. So here we've got a trill which is showing you if it's a Hollywood style. Is it a whole tone or a half tone trill on the various notes? And that was set up automatically. So that was just literally, as you drag out the trill line, it's doing that automatically to label what those trills should be. But there are other ways you can show trills. So for example, when you open click on a trill and open the panel, then there's various interval options. You can set different intervals for trills. So you can select each option here and you can set a specific interval for these trills if you want to. There's also a show stop line option at the end here if you want to show the stop line on trills. But also the trills know when they're displaying what they should be doing. So this trill here, because it's a minor second, it means it's adding a sharp on the D here. So when I do this and say actually make it a major so that the sharp appears on the trill, then it doesn't need that accidental anymore. So there's a lot less error checking and things you have to do when adding things like trills, as to actually where do you need the accidentals and all those kind of things. But also because these are intelligent and know what's going on, it means you can do, and I haven't set up an example today, you can do things like quarter tone trills and that kind of thing, and it's going to work those out. And if I switch to the part on this one, because this is a transposing instrument, so even though we're switching, actually in this case, we're switching from a number of sharps, 6 sharps here, to 4 flats, then you can see it's also telling you which accidentals it's going to need, if any, depending on what the key signature is and whether it's using sharps or flats. So that kind of thing is really useful to then say, actually, do we need to show, those kind of things. Daniel's just said, I love our new trills. Yeah, he really does. And although actually in this particular build I'm using at the moment, these trills aren't playing back, we are aiming to support the playback of trills with sample libraries and to some extent with basic MIDI options. But I'm not going to show you that today because, as I said, it's not in this particular build. But yes, they will also play back. Let me just check back for a second through the comments to see if there's anything I've missed. I think Daniel's doing a good job actually today. He always does a good job, but doing a good job of answering the comments. I'm not being silent on you. I'm just reading slowly. Da, da, da. Those trills are in the next free update. They're not available as of today, 30th of October, but you should have them in roughly a month. So by the end of November. I think, yeah, I don't think I've missed anything. If I have, then shout at me or email me later. So as you can see, there's a number of free, very useful free things in this update, but also there's a whole bunch of things that that I'm not going to show you today because I need to leave some things for the next session. I don't want to ramble on for a long time. But you'll have noticed a few of the options. So, for example, when I've been in some of these dialogues here, actually, for example, in the ornaments one is now expanded with trill options as well. So in here, you'll be able to set various options for these, and whether you're showing accidentals or Hollywood style or auxiliary notes, the position of the trill intervals, scale factors, the appearance of these options. I'll keep going. Positioning, of course, positioning for auxiliary notes and those kind of things. And as I said before, there's various other new options that you'll find in here as well. So there'll be the jazz articulations one we looked at before. We looked at some of the repeat ones before as well for repeat markers and repeat endings. So there's a number of new or revised sections in the engraving options as well. Yes, there is a little button up here for MIDI record, so I will show you that at some point, not in this session today. So it also means that we've changed some of the preferences, so the note input preferences have changed a bit, and so there'll be a new one for play options as well. So for example, MIDI input devices, quantize options, those kind of things are going to be in here as well. So yes, there's a number of other things, but I'll leave those for the next Discover session. So hopefully you'll join us at the next one. The next one will actually be the 28th of November at the usual time of 4 p.m. GMT. We're still in GMT at that point. So I think this weekend all of the people in the US and Canada probably are changing clocks. If you are in Canada, then maybe I'll see you at a session soon. I will be at Humber College, the University of Toronto, the OMEA convention in Toronto, and I'm also doing a live stream for the Canadian Music Centre That's all coming up in the next week. I know there's various other sessions happening as well. There's some training happening in Portugal. There's I think Frankfurt in Germany is doing some sessions as well. So it may be that you're going to see one of us at one of those sessions as well. And depending on which sessions you're at over the next month, maybe we'll be able to show you some other new options that are coming up in Dorico as well. But as I said, the things that I'm showing you today are all things that will be in the next free update. And yes, that is a metronome in the top right corner. Yes. I'd like to keep some things for next time. So thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you'll join us again at the next one. As I said, the next one will be the 28th of November. And I hope you're all enjoying Dorico, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye.